Thank you for joining us in this discussion of, believe it or not, staples or no staples. We're talking about staples, not the company Staples that sells stuff, but no, we're talking about staples that stick stuff together with a giant big piece of metal. Okay, so we're talking about staples. Typically, when you are working on tennis rackets, some are going to have staples in them, primarily to hold the butt cap onto the racket. Um, Staples are not good, uh, and when we can avoid them, we do avoid them. And we use a chemical um, compound to hold the butt caps on the shaft. A couple of reasons. Number one, if you drive a staple through a butt cap into the foam pallet, the likelihood of messing up that pallet is great. Right? Not only will the staple go through the pallet, it will also go through the carbon fiber, which is part of what has to happen because the carbon is going to hold the staple. The molded pallet is just going to crumble over time, not necessarily at the beginning, although I have seen some fresh rackets that do have a fracture of the foam. So it's to be avoided whenever possible. And another thing that should be avoided, as we're talking about staples, is removing the butt cap if it does not have to be removed. Don't take it off just to be thinking it has to come off. Typically, butt caps do not have to come off. There's a trap door that allows you to get in there and do some stuff if you want to mess around with the tube. If it does not have a trap door on the butt cap, I would say forget about it. Okay, don't don't try to do anything. However, having said that, we have had a number of requests from people using rackets that good rackets, quite frankly, that do not have access to the inside of the tube. In that particular case, we take those butt caps off and put a new one on that does have a trap door. I should say a new one, probably not the same brand, but we will put one on that has a trap door. And on that trap door will be typically either our um, butt cap trap door um, label or the label of another brand. But that's an extreme situations. Not a lot of people really want to get back in there and mess around. And if we're going to be in there and messing around and taking the butt cap off and stuff is not that big of a deal. But don't do it at home if you can avoid it. Um, just it's not really worth it. Once in a while, people will come into the world headquarters of Racket Quest and they'll say, my butt cap is squeaking. Well, the butt cap is squeaking because the foam pallet is destroyed. In a case like that, the foam pallet has to be repaired, and that's okay. But we can do that as well. However, talking about staples, that's what started this whole conversation. Talking about staples, we just finished up a a new head 301.4 Pro Stock or Pro Stock slash SMU racket for a client that does need and prefer staples. And typically, when we talk about staples, we normally don't have the need to do four. We normally do a couple diametrically opposed from each other. In this particular case, that's what we do. So we have been using the same staple gun, pneumatic gun, for a long, long time. A beautiful, beautiful piece of work made by Omer, Omer, an Italian firm. And I first saw this device when we were making tennis rackets in Taiwan. They had a couple of Omers, and they're really, really, really quite nice. But it's been a long time, and we've been using it a lot. So over the years, it's because it's been 10 years we've had this unit. So today I'm getting all ready to pop a couple staples in this 301 dash 4 dot 4, not dash, dot 4. There is a dot 5, by the way, uh, different string pattern, but there is a 301.4 and a 301.5. Okay, so we're talking about the same racket essentially, but it's different string patterns. So I'm getting ready to pop the staple in there, and no staples are coming out. This is weird. Okay, so I open it up and look in there, and sure enough, there are the staples. And these are staples that you wouldn't want to run into your hand because I mean they are heavy duty staples, narrow crown, 18 gauge, and I don't want to drive one through my finger. Put it that way. Okay, so I'm very careful. I look in there, and there are staples in there, but they're not stapling. This is a bummer. Okay, the last thing we're doing before we call the client and say your 301.4 is ready to go, and I can't because I can't get the staple gun to work. So, what do you do? First of all, what I do, I probably shouldn't, but I began to disassemble the staple gun because I could see what the problem was, and I thought this should be an easy fix. Well, making a long story short, no, it's not an easy fix. It can be fixed, but this is where shopping online comes in real handy. Okay, I called Omer. They have a office in Texas, Hutto, Texas. I'm not sure where that is, but very, very, very nice people. I talked to Fred and I talked to Paul, and I said, I've got a situation here with my Omer staple gun, and I don't know what to do except ask you guys to get me one. And she said, well, we can't get you one quickly. However, one of our distributors may have one on hand that they can ship out to you, and that would maybe help. In the meantime, I'm good. I'm waiting for my Omer because it's a nice, nice piece of equipment. I have invested in an overnight delivery of another brand, same pneumatic features, same narrow crown staple capabilities. Um, so I have a staple gun to do the last couple staples of this 301 dot 4 racket. Okay, so that's my story about staples. I'll tell you tomorrow how it works out. I'll see how wonderful this new device is. It is not an Omer, I can tell by quite frankly by the price, but it may do the job. And if it does, we'll have two staple guns to use when we need to use staple guns. We don't use very many staples. I think I bought 5,000 staples when I got the Omer 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. And I lift the little package and it still feels as heavy as the day I brought it into the world headquarters. So I haven't used all that many because, again, like I said, we prefer not to use staples. And if I'm talking to racket technicians, uh, that's why we don't want to use them. And if you can avoid using staples, please do use a chemical. We use a single component stuff from Star Bond, um, and it's been extraordinarily good stuff for us. But we want to make sure the butt caps don't rattle around, don't fall off. The advantage of a chemically bonded butt cap to the foamed pallet is that if it does for some reason become loose or squeaky, it can be repaired. You don't have to go in and replace the foam or the pallet, for example. Um, so it's a better way to approach things. But there are people that need those staples, and so people in need get what they need typically. Okay, if we're doing, we try the best to do that. So if you need staples, you need staples. If you don't need staples, a good chemical bond will probably do just fine for you. And the 301.4, by the way, is the racket that Yannick Sinner uses. So you can imagine the thin beam, um, sort of flexy. Uh, and when we get them, they're not cut, so we can cut them to any length. And I think the specification that this player wanted was 27.2 inches long. As I said before in another video, the last thing we do with a full custom racket, a Pro Stock or SMU, whatever you want to call it, is cut it to length. If you didn't see that or hear that last post, is because when the racket is strung, when we do it, we know what it's going to be when it is finished stringing. Sometimes, if it's not strung by us, the head shape can change, maybe get a little bit longer, may get a little bit shorter. So if it goes out of the world headquarters in 27.2 and the head is shorter by an eighth of an inch, it's not 27.2 anymore. So the long way around that the reason we do it, the last thing we do is simply cut it to length. And that's what makes it so frustrating to have no staple. The last thing we were doing is cut the length to rock and roll, and no staple. But now tomorrow we will have a staple gun, and then I'm going to get the Omer fixed, and we'll be back in business 100%. But I'll let you know how that works out. But anyway, if anybody's interested in a 301.4, remember there's a 301.4, which is 16 by 19, and a 301.5, which is 18 by 20. And if you remember the old Speed Touch, the old Speed Touch had the same string pattern, and that does include shared holes. Okay? The retail versions of the Speed typically do not have shared holes, but this version does. So if someone's looking for a 301.4, it's going to be 16 by 19. A 301.5 is going to be 18 by 20. And if you want staples, we'll staple it tomorrow, not today. We're done stapling today. So anyway, thanks for listening to my story about staples. But I will let you know how it turns out, because it's important. You know, it's really what we love to do, and it's absolutely essential that it's done the right way. And I'd like to say right now to my good friend Christian Zima, that just had a liver transplant, if you see this, I wish you well. We have spoken on the phone. He seems to be doing well, but that's a big deal. And I hope you're healthy and back on the court very, very soon. Okay? Bye. And thanks to you for everybody for listening, watching, but don't watch while you're driving. Okay? Bye-bye. Talk to you later. Bye.